for most of human civilization, we believed movies could only be watched for mindless consumption. What else were we wrong about?
This movie has more secrets than you could possibly imagine.
You feel like going for a cinematic ride?
I thought you'd never ask.
Just try not to swallow your tongue.
What?
In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, one podcast has taken a stand, thoughtfully engaging the art of our day, dissecting the narrative, and pointing the people back to the greatest storyteller of all. You are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to episode 337 of Popcorn Theology, where we examine films where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm James.
I'm Eric.
And hey, wait a minute, I'm James. What's going on here? I'm James and I'm not British. Oh, if anyone hasn't figured out right now, we have a special guest with us. So it's kind of like, I think, the going from Godzilla versus Kong to Godzilla X. Is it X Kong or Times Kong?
I think we're going Times.
Times Kong? Eric?
I was going with X because there wasn't a lot of Godzilla on it, so I figured, hey, why not?
Godzilla X Kong. Oh,
yeah.
But remember in Godzilla versus Kong, they had Alexander Skarsgård, and they ditched him. And in this one, they brought in Dan Stevens. They brought in a British ringer to kind of add to the mix. So that's what we've done with this episode. So I want to welcome for the first time the other James, James the Younger. I think that's what we're going to call you, right?
Yep.
Great. In this crowd, that's my name.
All right. Great to have you, the Younger. Okay, so we are looking at Godzilla Times Kong, The New Empire, directed by Adam Wingard and starring Rebecca Hall, Dave Stevens, Brian Tyree Johnson, and Kaylee Hodel? Yeah, Hodel. And this is the fifth film in the MonsterVerse movie series, along with the Monarch miniseries on Apple TV, and there's actually a Netflix cartoon that I saw just the other day. That's part of the whole mythos, and it takes place on Skull Island. Have not seen it, but it's out there if anyone wants to watch it. And I'll go ahead and let James the Younger give us the story summary.
Wait a minute, I'll give you the summary. The summary is, let them fight. It's kaiju wrestling.
So a summary beyond the sort of zero gravity monkey fighting that happens in this.
Yeah.
Okay, so the latest chapter in the monsterverse finds the mighty Kong and the fearsome Godzilla facing a long-buried threat hidden within our world that emerges to threaten the existence of everything on Earth. We also learn more about the relationship of Kong's species and Godzilla, diving deep into the mysteries of Skull Island, Hollow Earth, and beyond.
Nice. Well, talk about going beyond. Popcorn Theology has gone beyond an audio podcast and are now same day debuting these video episodes on YouTube, hopefully that you are watching right now, along with clips, highlights, and additional content. So be sure, maybe even right now, just hit pause, jump over to YouTube, like, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And whether you use Facebook, Twitter, X, again, we're going back to X, or maybe it's Times, yeah. Instagram,
Godzilla,
Discord.
Twitter, Kong. Wait.
Yeah, exactly. It was Twitter Kong, yeah. Godzilla, Twitter Kong. That's what we're watching. Whether it's Discord, find and follow Popcorn Theology, like and share this episode with your friends, and let's broaden that conversation.
I'm going to print this episode out and email it and physically mail it to all my friends.
We can get you the transcript afterwards. It's AI generated.
There you go.
It's great.
There you go.
Like you read that like a flick book. So you guys can help keep Popcorn Theology popping by supporting them. You can support financially through Patreon. Donating at least $1 per month will make you a patron saint. This gives you special access to an exclusive Facebook group and channel on the public Discord server, and allows you to vote on future episodes. You can also check out the Popcorn Theology merch store and get shirts, mugs, stickers, and more.
All right. So before we get into spoilers, let's give this some Popcorn Theology ratings. And James, you're fairly familiar with our format and show, but from a popcorn perspective then, what did we think of this particular movie? 5th in the series. Was it stale? Was it fresh? Or was it buttered and salted? Bad, good, or great, in other words. So give me a rating and a 1-minute reason why. And we'll let Eric, why don't you go first so James can see how we do this.
So... this is stale. This was stale in my opinion. That doesn't mean I didn't like it or enjoy myself. Just so people know, it's like you can know a movie's dumb and stupid and basically a McDonald's cheeseburger and still enjoy it. But it's the type of movie that doesn't have a lot of rewatchability, and that's really how I've started gauging and rating movies a lot of times now is. If this is on, if I'm scrolling through TV and it's on, will I stop and watch it, or will I keep looking for something else? And this is just not something I'm gonna come back to probably anytime soon. But it was a fun ride. But I did feel dumber after watching it.
All right, now you know that moment without spoilers because it's in the trailer. You know that moment in the movie where Kong is standing at the pyramid and Godzilla just charges at him. And Kong is like, wait. That's what's happening right now, man, because you're so wrong. You could not be more wrong. Rewatchability, my wife and I went back and saw it 2 days later. We've seen it twice. Sorry, man, this movie is buttered and salted. This felt like the end game of the monsterverse. People were literally cheering out loud during the kaiju wrestling scenes. Or at least Kat and I were. At least 2 of us were. It reminded me of the Showa era of Godzilla films. Finally, but as if finally now they had the money to not have people in rubber suits. There have always been 2 kinds of Godzilla films, right? Serious and silly. And then I feel like in the last year we've gotten the best of both worlds. So, So James the Younger, Eric and I are diametrically opposed here. It's like Kong versus Godzilla. So where do you stand?
No, I enjoyed this. For full disclosure, I've generally loved all the MonsterVerse movies. So for me, it's like this is high up. And for me, it felt a little bit lower stakes than some of the previous movies, which was not my kind of favorite of the MonsterVerse. But that lower stakes is actually kind of comes through consistent world building in my mind. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. I've also seen it twice. I took my kids to see it and they liked it. And so I think that's the most fun my kids had in the theater for the MonsterVerse. And my personal rating system is really based on like how much fun I had in the movie theater, basically. And it goes up a point if it's like burned into my head forever because of how inspiring it was, basically.
Wait, so you're going fresh or buttered and salted then?
I'm still gonna go buttered and salted.
Okay, all right.
It's fair, you guys enjoy your popcorn however you want to enjoy your popcorn.
Okay, that's good. I thought for a minute we might actually have all 3 different rating levels there. I wasn't sure where we were getting that wind up. Okay, we all know the film's quality does not equal its theological depth. So if we're going to drink from this movie's depth of themes, was it deep enough that Godzilla could swim in, or likening it more to a soda perhaps, was it diluted, was it carbonated, or was the cup running over with ideas? What do you think? We'll actually start with you first, James.
This was definitely diluted. This was not a deep movie.
Eric?
Yeah. So I'm going with diluted. It'd been great if I could have gone there. Like this movie was so deep, but no, it was pretty diluted. The themes they want you to think about, they're pretty transparent, and they're not too terribly deep. I mean, You could go deep on the one in particular, but it's pretty transparent and pretty shallow.
Sure. Well, except for the fact that they dive deep down into Hollow Earth, I'm going to agree. It's diluted, but look, we all agree on this, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
Definitely has an idea or two, but it is mostly a visual treat. It's too bad we couldn't have Richard Foltz with us here, because I'm sure we could have equated it to WW.
Yeah.
What is it now? FE? I don't even know. They keep changing it. But it's really like watching wrestling. And Richard might get offended that I'm implying wrestling isn't deep, but
there's storylines that have gone on for decades, I've been told.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. All right. Well, it looks like we actually have so we have differential on the popcorn side, but maybe some agreement on the theological side. So if it's not deep, I guess we'll see how long this episode's going to be, but we'll dive right into that. First, though, let's go ahead and drop some ads, and we will be back. And we'll officially be past spoiler time. We'll get into the ins and outs, the loves and didn't like, and then the theological ideas happening in Godzilla times X Kong.
Twitter. Godzilla Twitter Kong.
Godzilla Twitter Kong. The new empire.
Popcorn Theology has been mindfully viewing cinema from a godly perspective since 2015. But why? Where did it come from? Well, one of the inspirations was our host James Harleman's book, Cinemagogue, published in 2012, exploring the intersections between film and faith. And now, fresh off the press, is an updated edition of the book, the Cinemagogue Director's Cut. This version contains over 40 pages of new content with reviews and recommendations, movie references, illustrations, further shaping the story-formed argument for God's existence while also delving deeper on hot topics like how we deal with sex and nudity in film. It's the how-to guide for all things popcorn theology. And this time, it's not just available on Kindle and in paperback, but also a hardcover edition for all you true book lovers. So if you like movies, if you're a cinephile, if you spend hours talking film, this book is definitely for you. Or if you're a casual consumer who thinks movie making exists merely for diversion, this book may just change your life. Cinemagogue available now at Amazon.com. For bulk orders or signed copies, check out Cinemagogue.com for details.
Hey, this is James, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's because you're interested in movies, or theology, or best of all, both. And that probably means you're our kind of people, sharing things in common with our community, and maybe sharing common interests our listeners and viewers would be interested in as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's big part of what we're all about. So for more information on advertising with us, contact info@popcorntheology.com. And we're back. And dropping the spoiler warning as we dig deeper into Godzilla, whatever it is, Kong, the New Empire. But before we do that, I did want to take a few moments to talk about what our British guest here does for a living. He's sadly, James, you are not a kaiju dentist like Trapper in this movie. You might be interested. I kind of feel like you could be doing that job if it was available.
Sometimes it comes close.
Okay. But like the intrepid Dan Stevens character, James has a pretty unique role in life and ministry that definitely is out of the norm. So, James, why don't you fill in the listeners on what you do when you're not talking about Godzilla?
Yeah, so I run a nonprofit called the Al-Maida Initiative. And Al-Maida is actually an Arabic word that means a table full of food and conversation. So what we do is we facilitate friendship and worldview conversations between Christians and Muslims. You know, we are Bible-believing Christians, but we're trying to provide a space where Christians and Muslims can have honest conversations with each other about what's most important. And I actually have a podcast called the Al-Maida Initiative Podcast, inventive, I know. and you can find us on YouTube as well. We try and release content every week. Some of that is me having conversations with Muslims about different issues. Some of it's Christians kind of analyzing things that are happening in the Muslim world, like Israel and Gaza, like Turkish elections, or like a Dragon Ball Z theme park opening in Saudi Arabia right now, or just, whatever's going, really, whatever's going on in the Muslim world from a Christian perspective, and trying to bring Christian analysis to a part of the world where Christians aren't really thinking about it all that much.
Nice. You got one interesting little tidbit or tale for us?
Oh gosh.
On the spot. Whoops.
So yeah, I have so many. I gotta find one that's not like, personal. But this week we've been so over the last 2 years, we've actually been working to try and import an Afghan church from a refugee camp in Abu Dhabi, and try and establish that in the Seattle area. So we've been, helping a bunch of Afghans who are fleeing persecution come here, reformulate their lives, and try and reformulate the Afghan church, and try and build a kind of like giant diaspora Afghan Christian community that can then communicate Christianity in Dari and Pashto and the Afghan languages. So my week has been full of a lot of that. This week, there's still a massive humanitarian problem there. There's a lot of Afghans that are kind of like drifting up from Brazil through the southern border. We have about 50,000 Afghans in Seattle right now, and it always leads to lots of wacky adventures.
and probably, and in many ways, probably more fruitful and more life impacting than the wacky adventures that we're going to be talking about today.
I have pop culture is actually a great way to connect with people from different cultures. So, if you're coming from somewhere, talking to someone like from, say, they're from Saudi Arabia, or they're from, Afghanistan or something, so much about their way of life, about their culture is going to be different. But so often, whether it's media for me, sports for other people who are not me, these kind of entertainment things are actually a great way of building bonds across different cultures, because it kind of gives us this common language that's somewhat universal. So, while my adventures are different than Godzilla times Kong, Godzilla times Kong and liking Godzilla movies and nerd culture actually is a huge bridge between people from different cultures. So if you want another excuse to enjoy yourself, that's a good one.
Right on.
Cool.
Unless Godzilla is going and smashing through all those bridges, which he does quite a bit in this movie.
No, actually, this is funny because when I was in Cairo in 2021, I kept trying to work out how big Godzilla would be compared to the city as I was in it, and I was trying to do kind of like measurements. So thank you, Adam Wingard, for visualizing that for me, because I was trying to imagine it beforehand.
Nice. Well, we're definitely into the popcorn talk now then, officially, if we're talking about Godzilla destroying all of our favorite cities or places we would have liked to visit had he not got there first. But it's time for our popcorn thoughts, and so it's great to have you along for the ride, James. Obviously, we have a little history, so I knew that you were a big Godzilla fan, so it's fun to have you on the episode. So, but let's talk MonsterVerse in general so far. So we have 5 movies, and so I'm wondering, you actually mentioned it earlier, kind of like the kids had maybe the most fun, and you were thinking it was high. But so how's the MonsterVerse going so far, and where does Godzilla X Kong rate for you?
So, quick disclaimer, I'm not going to try and rate Kong Skull Island. It's been a while since I've seen it. I haven't revisited that one in a while. I remember enjoying it, but I can't give it a number right now. But with all the Godzilla movies, 2014 Godzilla was actually 10 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
I loved that movie. I know not everybody did, but if you listen to Gareth Edwards, who's also British, his experience of Godzilla...
British bias.
Well, so he talked about when he was a kid in England, Godzilla movies would play at like 2 a.m. So he'd record the VCR and have to rewind it on Saturday morning so he could watch it. that was my exact experience growing up watching Godzilla. So for me, like, there's things I've enjoyed about all of them, but nothing quite beat that first time seeing this, ridiculous rubber suit character, which I've always you always imagine as awe-inspiring whenever you see it that way. That first movie did such a good job of scaling it, making it feel real, making it feel like epic in scale, right? So that, and so even though Godzilla King of Monsters was great, it can't replicate that first, okay, you see this thing on the big screen, you see it, you're seeing it at scale for the first time, and the juxtaposition between that and like 1998 Godzilla, where that Godzilla gets caught on a bridge and killed in the bridge, whereas this Godzilla just walks straight through the bridge. It was perfect. So that for me, 10 out of 10. Godzilla King of Monsters, 9 out of 10. Godzilla vs. Kong, 9 out of 10. This one, 8 out of 10.
Wow. He's got his numbers down, man. He's more prepared than I am, at least, very least. That's good. Right on. So that's a pretty high bar, Eric. So we already had we know you have feelings. So where's this?
I don't think I have that high a bar for any Godzilla movie other than -1. But this one's probably the bottom for me. I haven't gone back and rewatched all of them. I really liked 2014, and I really liked Skull Island. I liked the more seriousness, like tone that they had to both of those. You really got. It's funny enough, the previous film, I didn't like any of the human characters, so I was like, just show me more monsters. Just show me more monsters. I was like, that's what I'm here for. And this one, I'm like, I could have used a little bit more like human element.
There's no pleasing Eric.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so each movie has been getting sillier and sillier as we've gone along. I know that's part of basically Godzilla trajectory. that kind of happens. It's like they come out with a series when they kind of reboots everything, and everyone goes, okay, that's right, this can be serious, and then it gets sillier and sillier, the further it goes along. So, again, I enjoyed it. It's just not a good movie.
Okay, I gotta know though. So this movie and Godzilla '98, come on, man.
So on a pure seriousness level, Godzilla '98 at least took it seriously to an extent. It's still a giant. It's just a giant iguana instead of a prehistoric, force of nature. So in that regard, yes, this one is
serious.
Better. I haven't seen
Hank Azaria. I'm just saying.
That shows how unserious this movie is.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, I am smack dab in the middle. So, so it's interesting. We all have different trajectory there. See, King of the Monsters for me seemed to be the most love letter faithful to the old mythos. Michael Dover, even down. It's the one thing I've missed about the two Kong Godzilla movies is we don't quite have Godzilla's score. We don't have the traditional. I mean, -1 even had the traditional Godzilla march and everything. I mean, the reason we had Mothra. Right, you had King Ghidorah, you had everything going on in that movie. And it was great to see Mothra back now that the spoiler warning has been dropped. So, yeah. But for me, it's King of the Monsters, and then probably Godzilla versus Kong. And so this one's smack dab in the middle for me, just because I love kaiju wrestling, and I love Kong Skull Island. 2014 for me, again, none of us are saying any of them are terrible, but it had the least Godzilla, and I just. The only character I was really invested in died at the end of the first act.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston. And so it's kind of like the other characters were okay, but they weren't stellar performances, so I wasn't engaged like I was with something like -1, where the human characters had an awesome story, but that's another universe. So that's what's kind of
our 2-hour podcast on that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my. All right, Joel. Well, so James the Younger, what stood out for you? Was there stuff that this is my favorite parts, or was there something that you were kind of like, actually I didn't like this?
So I think my favorite part was Godzilla making the Colosseum his bed.
Yes. That's up there for me too. Yeah. Totally.
That was really good. That was really funny. I enjoyed that both times. And the bewildered police officer at the end being like, okay, this is his bed now. That was great. What I didn't love about this was that it kind of felt like low stakes compared to the other.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
So once we found out that Shimo was being controlled by Scar King with this thing that he had to like hold and issue commandments with, it just made Shimo feel like not that much of a threat. So at that point, it's like, all right, as soon as he drops this thing, then he's kind of screwed, which is exactly how the movie went down.
Yeah.
However, what I do appreciate about this is I feel like they're taking Godzilla's power scaling seriously. So they didn't nerf him just to kind of make the story more interesting. So it felt like Godzilla never actually had a legitimate threat in this movie, which, from an in-universe perspective, he kind of shouldn't, right? None of these other monsters really pose any real threat to him. So that was it. And then the other thing that I think, like, a lot of this happened in the Hollow Earth, and because there's a lot of it's happening in the Hollow Earth, you don't get a great sense of like the scaling of the monsters most of the time. So because this happens on a kind of monster level, you lose some of that sense of these things are absolutely huge. But the city battles were still good. And then my favorite Hollow Earth moment is when Kong is using the baby Kong to like hit the other monkeys. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was great. So those are the highs and the lows for me. I mean, the human characters were fine. They were engaging enough. I think Rebecca Hall really acted well in this movie. And she brought like a genuine serious performance to a movie that there really wasn't any reason to, and she kind of like carried it from any sort of dramatic perspective, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, the human characters were fine. Pace was good.
Cool. So Eric, same to you. Good, bad, and the ugly.
All right. So for me, it was obviously I called it stale, and again, it's like it doesn't have that rewatchability. It doesn't have as like I've been craving to go back and rewatch -1. I want to go back and watch 2014. This one I don't really have like itch like when I got out of -1, I wanted to go see it again like that night, and I knew I couldn't, and that was the difference. This one I got done, I was like, okay, yeah, it's good. I started thinking about my notes, and then. But yeah, so I probably won't rewatch this one until my son is a little bit older and we start doing a Godzilla marathon and we start going through everything. Start with obviously the best 98, and then go up, then go down from there. So I do know is paying a lot of homage to like the older Godzilla flicks and everything, but for me personally, I don't want to see Godzilla suplexing Kong. That's not what I want out of it. I get that that is in the mythos. That is what you see. It's just not my preference of Godzilla movies. It made me laugh when I saw it, which kind of takes you out of the experience of what's going on screen, in my opinion. I shouldn't be laughing.
I won't disagree. We were laughing out loud at that.
Yeah, it's
like true. I like for me, it's good way versus bad way. It's like we both agree. Yeah. We both laughed out.
Yeah, I was like, I probably shouldn't be laughing when the king of the monsters is destroying the pyramids, or when he's knocking down buildings that are probably killing hundreds of people. Just because it's like, look, he just threw Scar King against the building and destroyed a building. Stupid Scar King. And it's like, oh wait, there's a lot of people that probably just died right there. Again, this doesn't mean it was a bad movie or it wasn't enjoyable. it just doesn't mean I'm not going back for seconds with this. I did enjoy the soundtrack quite a bit, but I will highlight on one thing with the soundtrack is Dan Stevens' character cool, or does he just show up to cool music? And I think there's a lot of times we confuse the two people with like, oh, it was like Tony Stark shows up to cool music too, but he's cool. He's a cool character. You see all these other things, and you start to think about the Dan Stevens. He does a lot of cool things, but it's to a great soundtrack. So is he actually being cool in this stage? But that's just some food for thought.
Well, okay. I thought it was buttered and salted, and and Dan Stevens was a part of that. We'll get to that because I do think, in a weird way, Eric, like it's like every reason you didn't like this movie is almost all the reasons I did like this movie. I mean, the extended monster scenes. I feel like the last couple movies we've been getting more and more monster on screen. I haven't done an exact count of screen time, but of course this time it was a little more Kong, and I could see that as a detriment. But it felt like to points you guys have already made, they reduced the human story and gave more to Kong. They didn't give more to Godzilla. I think we still had as much Godzilla or about the same. So, but what I really did like about this movie, which maybe even will play to the sort of cross-cultural appeal that James was talking about, was so much of this movie didn't need subtitles because it was nonverbal communication. And that was kind of a daring choice, right? You have guys who are, you have apes that are just expressing things through grunts and sighs, and yet I was really impressed with the facial expression. Like there's scenes where like the little baby Kong is evident, like it's evident to you, like, oh wait, he's pretending to be nice, but he's actually he's going to deceive, and like the nonverbal exchanges between characters, I felt like I could subtitle them. I'd love to see somebody go through and do like a mock track, especially for the King Kong Godzilla fight, because I felt like Kong's just like, no, wait a minute, let me explain, and Godzilla's like, oh no, you didn't. So I want to see that. I think we need somebody to do some humorous subtitlings for those scenes. But I would love to see that. But I mean, the best moment for me was probably the fight around the pyramids, because to James's earlier point, above ground with the scale of human interactions and human constructs is far more interesting to me than the Hollow Earth stuff. And I do think, like, I loved that Dan Stevens was in the movie having fun. I kind of feel like maybe he's a Godzilla fan who was just happy to be there. And I'm not sure he gave a convincing performance, but he just looked like he was enjoying himself in a Godzilla movie. So that is true. But I did love that they deepened the mythos. They tied up a lot of threads from Kong's all the way back to Kong's Skull Island and what the Iwi people were all about. Mm-hmm. King of the Monsters, some stuff from that, and then of course the last GVK movie where you understood there was this empire where he got the axe and like what was the former kingdom that had been there. So I felt like in a lot of ways they advanced the story of the monsterverse in one movie more than a lot of the others did, and on it feels like this could be the end if they wanted. I think based on the box office, we're definitely getting 3. And I have heard, I mean, I think Adam Wingard said if he wanted this one to be from Kong's perspective more than the human perspective, and if we get another one, it's going to be from Godzilla's perspective. So for me, this could be the greatest one yet coming. So we'll see if it's like 2 hours of Godzilla and we're getting inside his head. Yeah,
we'll all be disappointed because it will be first person, and so you actually will never see anything other than his hands and his feet. Yeah. It will all be first person.
I don't know. Can you see his hand? Can he see his own hands? I guess they are longer
as soon as he looks down.
T-Rex. That's true.
I can do the math here. Yeah. He can work it out.
Okay. He's good. No, that's good. Well, we've probably spent enough time on the popcorn. Although we've all admitted the theology is perhaps a little thinner than some, but we'll pour the glass and wash it down and see what we've got. And shift gears into the deeper themes, as it were. And I don't know, I guess we could have anybody go first. Eric, I think I'm going to go first because I'll just have fun with it. And the theme I got really wasn't as huge or heady as some of them that we've talk about sometimes. But really, what I found the most obvious sort of narrative parallel was what I would call was Kong's journey as a big Moses motif. And that takes place, if you have to put it in the context of the other movies, but Kong's story here puts him in the freedom from slavery role that I feel mimics movements of the life of Moses. They're just all jumbled and out of order. Like Kong, like Moses, he wasn't born and raised with his people. They floated him down in a basket to Skull Island, and he was there, right? And his parents seemingly died early. And of course, we've seen he spent most of his life in the wilderness, and again away from his people, until now he's called back. He's back to his home, the Hollow Earth. He's back, and he finds his people, and he finds them. Where does he find them? In slavery, of course, to an evil pharaoh named the Scar King, or Scar from the Lion King, perhaps in another form. And we even revisit the biblical moment where Moses, like Kong, sees somebody beating a slave and intervenes, and I don't know if they established it or not. I feel like he killed that guy with one punch. Was that what happened? I don't think that guy ever gets up again.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't see it.
Yeah. I think
I'd stay down.
I think that way. I mean, it may have been unconscious, but I was just like, I think he just killed him with one punch. But he doesn't have a staff like Moses, but he has his special axe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then the Scar. Oh no, I have my own tricks too, and he has his own things as well. But here he's telling the Scar King, "Let my people go." He gets his Kong posterior handed to him, so he has to. Of course, it takes more than him. He has to call on God, Zilla, to help. And by movie's end, of course, the chains are broken. He's now ready to lead his people out of that volcanic hellhole and into the promised land of Hollow Earths, where they can have their new place together. That's like, all right, we basically there was no big body of water they had to pass through, but other than that, I'm definitely picking up. Now they're going to go to the land of milk, honey, and giant flying lightning creatures. So they should be pretty good from now. I don't know if you guys picked up the Moses motif or the salvific angle there, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I hadn't picked up that corollary or analogy. But yeah, no, it is an interesting thing to think about. It's like, yeah, no, it's so I was coming more for Kong's story. I was coming more from the angle of it's this classic search for family. I said the one value that the secular world still values is family and finding your place in the world. But I hadn't really thought of it that way. I did think of it in the way of, he finds what should be his family, what should be a welcome home brother, type of thing, and it turns into a more of the prodigal coming home. Instead of being greeted by the father, he's greeted by the brother. And the brother's like, no, you're not coming in here. Yeah.
It's at my house.
Yeah.
What do you think, James?
Scar King hates Godzilla, and therefore he also hates Kong, right? If they hate you, they'll also hate me. Actually, I thought this movie is basically Revelation 20.
Do tell.
Okay, so Godzilla, King of Monsters, was actually like directly inspired by the Book of Revelation, right? It's like the slaying of the dragon. Godzilla versus Kong was like, secularism. It's like Mechagodzilla represents secularism, and that secular order to replace God is inevitably possessed by the evil that preceded it, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying, by the way, that Adam Wingard consciously is like, I'm going to base this movie on Revelation 20. But, after all that, in Revelation, listen to this. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather for battle. Their numbers is like the sand of the sea. And they marched up over the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The devil and who would deceive them were thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So, like, the theme of this movie, right, is that Godzilla is now reigning as the true king of the surface, and this threat that's been locked up in the earth is emerging to challenge the true king of the earth, under the big statue of Jesus, nevertheless, and then is anticlimactically defeated pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you were saying it's like the holy city with the people, fire coming down. I was like, literally, it was like when Kong and Godzilla come back, they're literally like a meteor that flies out of the thing and lands in this holy city. It's like, oh wow. It's like you're right. It's exactly Revelation 12. We need X send an X to Wingard and see what he thinks about it.
Yeah. Seriously, I mean, again, I doubt that's on purpose, but it's kind of funny considering how on purpose Godzilla King of Monsters did refer to, Revelation.
Yeah.
And so so the sort of enemy that was again locked away in the earth, then must be released for a short time, and then is basically not really a threat after all.
Yeah. That is one of the interesting things where one of the hosts has said it before. I don't remember who exactly, but they said image bearer is going to image bear. And it's that type of thing. Is like, so even if Adam Wingard wasn't conscious of it, God put all of this in all of our hearts. He expressly put it down in the Bible, but he put it all there for us to know, and it's his world, it's his story, and he gets to tell it the way he does, and we just pick up on the echoes from it a lot of times.
It's his world. We're just living in it. That sounds like a Godzilla line too.
Yeah.
Right. That's is that Birdie? I think Birdie. I think that was the last movie, but I think in this movie, this Kong himself, he's not just a Moses. The archetype works, and we actually talked about, to your point, James, this idea turns up in Ghostbusters as well, where you have this being that's been locked in the gloomy darkness being released. It's like, oh, we've had this motif in both Empire movies this year, and it's now time for them to be released to have their attempt and try to get their kingdom back reestablished. And of course, since we're not spoiling that movie, we'll say, well, at least in the Godzilla movie, that does not happen, and is beaten fairly easily. So, but I think that's because our main characters do represent some pretty biblical level characters too. Right, Kong's a bit of a Christ figure. If he's a Moses archetype, well, he obviously can be a type of Christ figure as well. The Scar King is obviously a bit like Satan. Clearly, this is the underworld. I mean, they're hanging around like volcanic fire, and it seems their job is to just push rocks around. I'm not sure what any of them were doing. It's like when they push the rocks to the one side, did they have to push them back to the other side?
It's the Temple of Doom.
It's creation of jobs. It's job creation. He's a great dictator. No, everyone has a job.
No, it is. Yeah,
so
it's the kids in the Temple of Doom. That's right.
Yeah. I kind of assume it's just he doesn't know, because the gravity is all weird. He doesn't really know which way he's digging in, so they're trying to like dig it out, but they're kind of going the wrong way.
Okay, there you go.
He's just lost, I think. The other thing, again, is what I say that. While this movie feels low stakes, it actually helps with the consistency of the themes, because ever since Godzilla King of Monsters, Godzilla was very literally Jesus in that movie. Right. Like literally, he died, rose from the dead, and defeated the evil, right? And now reigns as king over the earth, and they've established that. So for me, the stakes felt high for Kong, for sure, but the stakes never felt high for Godzilla. Which at this level, I feel like they shouldn't feel high. So, I appreciate the kind of consistency there, where Godzilla functionally represents the divine in this movie, and Kong is now Kong is submitted to Godzilla as at the end of the last movie, right? And now represents that just benevolent rule going down into the Hollow Earth. So while that's kind of Kong's nature as well, he's there. He's been defeated and is properly submitted in his proper place in the order of things, and now is able to function, knowing his place, right? Knowing that he's not Godzilla, and by giving up his own kingship, that's how he becomes king.
That's it. Yeah, if he had tried to stay on the surface, he would have died.
Yeah.
No, I do like any parallel or allegory that puts Kong well beneath Godzilla on the one hand, for sure, as he should be, because there's only one king of the monsters, and it's Godzilla. We all agree there. Look at that.
That's why we call him Kong, not King Kong.
But I was kind of picking up almost a trifecta or a triune relationship in this movie. On another level, you could almost see, like, Kong has almost in this story almost a Christ-like archetype, and then of course you see then Godzilla being a forever dispenser of wrath, and then of course we had the return of Mothra, who seems to be this unifying spirit. Now there's some problematic elements because there's no disharmony within the Trinity. But we kind of have this kaiju trinity of do-gooders now that are kind of reigning together at the end. They each have their role. And hey, the Kong submits to the father Godzilla, so that's definitely still in there.
Eternally,
but,
or
well, hopefully, yes. But the holy moth just should not have to calm down the father. So we do have we have Trinitarian problems if we try to make this it's a triune relationship, but it's a poor trinity. That's for sure.
It's hard to not see that, actually.
Yeah. Oh no. Once you see that little tri-team, it's sort of like the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Trinity, as it were. It's like you've got these three heroes that kind of have a triune, so that they're kind of above everybody else.
Yeah,
and it seems as though they're above all the other Titans at this point. But Revelation 20, I'm glad you brought that in, James. Eric, was there what was standing out to you in relation to this? Because especially if these guys are the reigning levels of the Titans.
So for me, the way I describe this is so Godzilla, the watchful protector. I'm just thinking, I think even in the trailers it said Godzilla is basically, he's like, Godzilla protects the earth. Right? That's like his job. That's the main thing he does. And the way I was kind of interpreting this, kind of looking at this, is the fight between Godzilla and Tiamat, actually. So I know the other creature, which I don't know what it was named, that Godzilla kills very easily. It was a rogue Titan. It was just like, it was tired of being submitted to Godzilla, I guess, and so Godzilla goes and destroys it. And then there's Tiamat, and we have this idea in Scripture, and people aren't quite sure how to interpret it, but this whole thing about like this divine council, where God takes a seat in the midst of the divine council and stuff. And there's a couple of different places in the Bible that list this. But I'll go ahead, I'll read these Bible verses, then I'll just talk about what Tiamat is in mythology. But so Psalm 82, and I'll read the whole one because it's short, and then I'll read a snippet of the next one. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High. All of you, nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. And again, it's just like God's going into this divine council, and he's basically calling all of them to we were just talking about Moses. And if you look at the 10 plagues, and it's not exact, but you look at the 10 plagues, each plague was an attack against an Egyptian god, and God literally submitting every single one. So you think about it like that, and they fight in Egypt too. Yeah. And then Psalm 89, I'll start in verse 5 and just read till 9. It says, let the heavens praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness in the assembly of the holy ones. Again, that divine council, the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the skies can be compared to the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings is like the Lord? A God greatly to be feared in the council of the holy ones, and awesome above all who are around him. O Lord, God of hosts, who is mighty as you are, O Lord, with your faithfulness all around you. You rule the raging of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. And this is really what you think about. So keep those in mind, and then I'll tell you the story of Tiamat. Tiamat was one of the gods that created the world, or it was just a being that kind of existed. And some people say it was the chaos dragon, or something like that. It was a being that existed, and she was in the waters, and then she met another god that was also in the waters, and it created the other gods. And eventually, when she was killed, again, a mortal god, which is just oxymoronic, when she was killed, her body was used to create the world. And the way that you see this in all of the mythologies compared to the God that you find, the Trinity that you find in the Bible, is they're always a God that started off one way and turns bad. Like, she was one way, she was a good, peaceful God, and then something happened, and then she literally created monsters. And that's one of the reasons why the other gods rose up against her, to her own children and grandchildren rose up against her to kill her. And so, because she went bad, all of the other gods came around and stopped her. And if you want to look at it this way with Godzilla versus Tiamat in this, is she's a lazy god in this. Maybe she's not doing anything bad or whatever, but she's not doing anything. And in Psalm 82, that's literally one of the things that God calls the divine council out to about, is you're not doing anything. Here you are, princes. Here you are, kings of the world, and you're not doing anything. There's stuff to be done. And Tiamat is just hanging out, absorbing all this power, becoming a really powerful being. And Godzilla just shows up and destroys her. I mean, we literally don't even see the killing blow. They're fighting. Oh no, she dropped around Godzilla. What's going to happen? And then her head floats to the surface of it. I was like, nope, Godzilla won. That's how anticlimactic it is when you come against the beast. And so when you have this creator protector of all things versus a material disinterested god. And Godzilla, he goes and invades the realm of Tiamat to take away her own crown because she wasn't doing what she was designed and purposed for at that point. Again, Godzilla to God analogies, not exactly the analogy, the routes you want to go down. But it still is an interesting thing. If you look at the God of the Bible and how he operates versus the Babylonian gods and how they operate, one, you'll notice they're always some sort of material being. They're always material. And our God is immaterial. He's the one who creates by speaking. All the other gods need to use something that's already existent to go and then create the world or do their acts of creation. Our God is the only one that ex nihilo creates and then sits in judgment over all of his stewards that he put out in the world. And this is how you look at it. Godzilla sits in judgment over that, over all the titans of the world. And then last part that I had was because we all thought it was funny, Godzilla lay in the Colosseum. And so I was like, what are they trying to say? All right, what they're trying to say is Godzilla's a gladiator. He's not that... Are
you not entertained?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's yelling at me at this point. So, I am entertained, I swear. I just didn't like it. No. But no, it's like he's his gladiator. He's not in it for the recognition. He's not in to save humanity. He's a brawler, and he's there to keep everyone in line. He does one thing only. Well, two things. He sleeps, and he sleeps for a long time, and he kills titans, and he's all out of sleeping right now. And he just goes back and he just sleeps again until something comes and disturbs that balance of nature. And it's just kind of this interesting thing is that humans in this storyline, and you would think the previous storylines were all about environmental impact. So shouldn't Godzilla, if he's trying to restore balance, be the enemy of humanity? And no, he's actually not. It's like humans, and I've said this multiple times, humans are a part of nature. Like literally, like we're a part of nature. And so if these titans are coming and destroying humans, Godzilla views that as the disruptor of nature, not humanity. Humans are supposed to go out and take dominion of the earth, and titans are supposed to protect them in however ways titans were supposed to protect people. I think we probably get the closest to how titans should have worked in the character of Kong, where he's actually able to have some sort of communication with them and is pretty much friendly with humans. So those were my two main points that I had.
So I think
feedback,
with,
James?
yeah, so I think with like this version of Godzilla, there's like a lot of different worldviews baked into this Godzilla. So you kind of have a lot of the old world dragon ideas. You also have kind of the Japanese idea of what a god is, which is very different than the sort of Judeo-Christian idea of what a god is. Then you also do have those Judeo-Christian ideas about what the divine is as well. So it always kind of like skews benevolent to some capacity as well. And there's obviously a kind of environmental message, kind of mixed with a nuclear message, which is kind of, it's all a muddle. But I never feel bad making God analogies from Godzilla. And the reason I don't is because the Bible actually does this. So you read the book of Job, he describes Leviathan. And what is Leviathan? Basically, the Bible describes Godzilla and then says how much more awesome is the one who created this.
Yeah.
So like, people are supposed to look at this creature and be like, no weapon prevails against it. Everybody falls back in fear when they see it. Its back is covered in armor and plates, and fire comes out from its mouth, and pride of man is broken down at the sight of him. Like that's the Godzilla movie, right? And
Yes.
That's exactly the point of the original Godzilla concept, because it's like this unstoppable force that no one can do anything about, created in nuclear energy. So every time we see something like that in the world, it ultimately does point us back to the God who is even more unstoppable than things of our creation, of nature and our imagination. So I don't feel blasphemous at all making sort of Godzilla to God analogies, because I think God himself invites us to do that with things we see in the natural world, as long as we understand that, God doesn't accidentally kill collateral damage when he's judging cities.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I might throw one of those softballs at you guys here in a little bit. But to your point about Tiamat in specific too, and God references, when you were talking, I saw that in the notes, and it reminded me of God in the Bible. Daniel 2:21 says he changes times and seasons, he removes kings and sets up kings. So it's like he will set up. He sort of reestablished the status quo, rules the Titans at the ends of King of the Monsters. Obviously, dispersed them with some level of go do your thing, and yet Tiamat, to your point, like maybe there was a laziness there. Maybe like the guy who buried his talents. This guy just buried his talents in the ice, and Godzilla decided he was going to take them. But here Godzilla, it's like, no, for my purposes, like I'm going to use this power for my purposes, and just goes and takes it. And so go Godzilla. It's like he sets up Titans, and he brings down Titans. Like he has that absolute Daniel 2 ability. It reminded me of how same thing. God talks about how Jeremiah talks about how he's going to use Babylon's power in Jeremiah 25. It says, the Lord Almighty says, because you've not listened to my words, I'll summon all the peoples of the north and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and I'll bring them against this land and its inhabitants, against all the surrounding nations. I'll completely destroy them, make them an object of horror and scorn and an everlasting ruin. But when the 70 years are fulfilled, I'll punish the king of Babylon and his nation. He's like, oh, I will use them to destroy, and then I will destroy them. Like they are my thing to use. It's like just like Godzilla needs Tiamat's power. Like I'm gonna use it. Like this is mine. I'm gonna take it by right, and I'm not gonna apologize for it. And you do see this absolute power and sovereignty that he has in these situations. And yeah, I felt like even when Kong comes up, it's like Kong didn't ask permission.
Nope.
So he got soundly. He was getting disciplined, even though he was going to help. Before they went down and had, I forgot to mention that in the popcorn section. The 0G fight was pretty epic too.
Oh yeah,
especially because I talked my wife into seeing it in 3D. So first time
cool.
was 3D. That was pretty wild. Just saying.
What was the pocket sand like in 3D? When Kong takes the sand and throws it at him, pocket sand.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So with the 0G fight and other things in this movie, it makes me again frustrated that how bad the old live action Dragon Ball movie was, because there are parts of this that were a Dragon Ball movie. So that the 0G fight is so clearly sort of Dragon Ball, but as actually documented, the designer of Godzilla's new form specifically referenced that it's inspired by a transformation in Dragon Ball.
Huh.
So
wow,
the Kaioken. So people making this movie are watching Dragon Ball, and it clearly like influences like the battle scenes in this movie, especially the zero gravity monkey battle.
Yeah. I was just saying,
that's cool.
Just say that scene has some rewatchability, Eric. Just say it. When you rewatch it with your kids, they're gonna love it. That's.
Oh yeah. It was when we saw the one before this, Godzilla versus Kong. When we saw that in theaters, there was a kid, probably about 8, 9 years old, down in the front row, and every time that they were fighting, he was going, "Whoa, whoa, wow!" Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's what this movie's for.
And when they had the Super Friends jump, or when they had the Super Friends moment where they're all running at each other and jumping, that was just like that. Who doesn't want that?
So
on
actually,
I'm just saying.
So I was thinking here, right? The Moses motif would be perfect if there was an instance in the story of Moses where God randomly shows up and tries to kill Moses.
Actually...
Oh, wait.
Right? and Mothra fills the role of Zipporah in this, right?
There you go. That's
actually pretty good, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, without the proper reverence in place, there's a threat.
I hadn't thought about that. I
Good
probably
callback,
would have gone more for the Jacob wrestling with God motif, but that actually fits way better. So
right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's and no bionic hand is going to give us a leg up on wrestling with God. Just to be clear. But we have talked. You guys mentioned a few times the collateral damage. And I thought I'd bring this up, and maybe I think this is an idea that is obviously wrong, just like trying to make our three main kaiju the Trinity. But people complain that Godzilla isn't man's. I've seen this in like chat rooms and stuff. Like, why do they talk about how he's a good guy? He bashes bridges. He steps on cars. He causes what we would call a lot of collateral damage. And here's my question for you. It's really a softball, but I think it's worth sort of articulating for our viewers. I think some people would probably have the same questions, right? What did 5-year-old firstborns or even infants in Egypt do? Like, what did they do when God's wrath passed over but didn't pass over them? Or what about Pharaoh's army? All of those soldiers, many of whom probably didn't hate, but were just we're just following orders. Or what about dead Israelites who perished because of Achan's sin in the Bible? Because another guy in the camp was hiding something. What do we do with a watchful overseer who seems to smash a lot of people who maybe weren't directly the problem or even the focus of his imminent wrath? Is there a way the Titans, even some of this stuff in these movies, could help us understand God in a proper context? What do you think?
Yeah, the way I would approach it is when God gives justice, one, it's justice, and he doesn't do it lightly. He is merciful. So justice is always deserved. That's if it's not deserved, then it's not justice. Mercy is never deserved. That's what makes it mercy. And so the issue with that I get from these types of movies in general, and I did put this in when we get to the lightning round, is the callousness that life is treated with. And that's where I draw. Is like, I have no this is sound weird to say. I have no problem with Godzilla killing people. It was like I get that. It's a literal war to save the world. In a lot of cases. So it's like war, people are going to die. And that's the way I view it. It is what it is. But how you treat that loss of life is really where your worldview comes in the play with that. And that's where I kind of bridge it, is when God acts, or he allows Babylon to go and capture Israel and punish his own people, and then turns around and punishes Babylon for being arrogant. Like, God's doing that from from mercy and justice. That's what he's doing it from. It's not just collateral damage. We came up with collateral damage to justify our own actions of when we accidentally do something. But God's never operating in the realm of collateral damage. And I'll accept collateral damage from the United States military, from Godzilla, from any of these other titans that are fighting for the survival of the planet. But they're just fighting to do what they're doing. So I have no problem with Godzilla killing people, as long as us, the viewers, take heavily the loss of life on that. And if you want to see that, go watch -1, where it really delves into that.
Yeah. My take is Godzilla doesn't owe you anything. So like, from a biblical perspective here, like, it's not possible for God to murder anybody, because God doesn't owe anyone anything. Like, then this is what a lot of people miss, just on a fundamental, like, logical element from the biblical perspective. The rationale of why you don't murder people in the Bible is from Genesis 9, where it says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, because God made man in his own image. The reason we all owe each other our lives is because God has given our lives to all of us, right? So taking someone's life is primarily a crime against God himself.
Yeah.
So when anybody dies, because the Bible says God determines God is sovereign over life and death, and no one else has control over that. When God demands someone's life from them, he is not taking anything he owes them, right? He's taking back what is his. Every human being belongs to him, and he has every right to do whatever he wants. And God taking someone's life can never be injustice. He's simply taking back what's his, right? Yeah. So in this framework here, Godzilla is a representation of some sort of divine force, which isn't malicious when it takes life. It is fighting for greater good. And the only way that you could actually make this work any better is, or be more analogous, is by turning Godzilla into God, right? Because the difference between how God works things and the way Godzilla works things is that the greater good and the justice of the individual, ultimately, the accounting reconciles those things in the end run. That every individual is given justice by God with nothing to complain about. Whereas Godzilla doesn't have that sort of individual sovereignty. No. He's a representation of God's overall power to an extent, but he doesn't represent the sort of unique individual love and investment and attention that God has in individuals. So that's what's missing from Godzilla, essentially, and which is missing from his justice.
No. I figured you guys could handle the aspects of that pretty well. I figured I'd just pitch the softball and see see where it went.
The problem with the Odyssey, a softball. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. No, well, and I would say clearly, I think even the way the movie plays it, God takes no life unintentionally, or without knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I kind of think we can kind of guess as Kong and Godzilla are walking around. Godzilla's like, oh, didn't see you there.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily aware of everything that's happening. Whereas God would, which is where the comparison falls short. And he's more like Leviathan, which James talked about earlier, and which should remind us of the greater God. And he doesn't quite technically, he needs more to be God to make the indiscriminate stomping kind of really feel like it has a godly point to it, and or a godly footprint to it. But that kind of does get us into sort of some of the things we need to reject, receive, and redeem. So it probably is about time for the lightning round and hitting things as far as what we've got. So first and foremost, and I'll say we've danced around this already multiple times, but when you think about things we need to reject in the film is, at some point, Godzilla, Kong, and Mothra all fall short, and they all fall short together. And I think that there is some people who actually do believe that like God the Father is sort of wrath, and Jesus is grace and mercy. Like they've almost split up the attributes improperly. They think, God was angry in the Old Testament, Jesus comes along and he's nice. So some could actually take the things we've been dancing around with, Kong's the mercy part, Mothra's unifying, Godzilla's like the father he's like the drunken dad that gets angry once in a while. That's like, no, this is not the way the Trinity works at all. They're never at odds. Jesus is not protecting us like from an angry father who is like in some way opposed. Like they're in no opposition in terms of spirit and intention. And that's not the way the atonement works. It's not that Jesus is like, Dad, no, and jumps in and stops him. So we have to make sure any of these loose parallels don't get picked up by a culture that totally misunderstands Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and make sure we don't reject that there's any squabbling, disharmony, or fist fights amongst the Trinity.
Yeah, absolutely. A reject for me is, I was kind of already touching on it, but the casualness about the loss of human life. One of the only named characters in the entire movie is killed off, and it gets played off more of as a joke than actually like a loss of life, and no one even thinks about him for the rest of the movie. You're there and gets eaten by a tree. Oh my gosh, he was eaten by a tree. And like it becomes a joke instead of is an actual loss of life. Similar scenes, I've talked about this, similar scenes in Act 3 of Jurassic World 2 is when when all the multimillionaires and billionaires are bidding on dinosaurs for ridiculously low prices, by the way. Those dinosaurs should be going for way more.
Right.
Yeah, it's like,
It's like, I could almost afford a dinosaur.
Yeah, I know. It's like they're poor millionaires, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where it's like the one person jumps into the elevator, and you see that there's other people in the elevator that are already hiding, and the door closes, and they go, and then the door opens, and the Indoraptor or whatever it was jumps in and kills all of them, and everyone in the theater laughs, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. This is the culture that we're in. It's like, oh yeah, just because you're someone that I don't like, or we're going to play your death off as a joke instead of something serious. So again, it's like all human life, even a mean person's life, is precious because of what the younger was saying just a minute ago, is we're image bearers, and to damage the image is an affront against God, not just the person that you're angry with.
That's an intriguing point. I was thinking about other movies, like the first Jurassic Park even though the slimy guy who gets killed by the Dilophosaur, like it seems just desserts, but it's still intense. Like it's not.
Yeah.
You're still kind of like, oh my gosh, like a person got killed. Even a cheesy movie that we laugh at, like Independence Day. A lot of people get killed in that. But there is, I agree, Independence Day has a lot of fun, but it still feels like the gravity of all the people who've been killed does seem that it's translated in a way that still feels like it has a heaviness to it. Yeah, that's lacking a bit here. That's true.
Okay, let me push back a little bit on this.
All right.
Because I've just been reading through First and Second Kings, and there's some instances in there where, you know, it doesn't feel especially, like, heavy. So, for example, Elisha and the she-bears and the 40 youths, it's like, is there an era where people, like, didn't read through that with, like, at least a little bit of amusement in there? So what is going on? and then there's this other instance where, you know, the 50 gods come to arrest Elijah and is like, all right, if I'm the prophet of God, let fire fall down from heaven and consume everybody, and you know, it happens. So it's like I definitely feel like there's times in the divine narrative where, you know, God's enemies are kind of treated like NPCs sometimes. I mean,
but I feel like there's still weight there. I feel like there's still weight in a lot of those areas. Like dude gets jail puts a tent peg through a guy, and it's still like oh, like that, like you know, or Alan Rickman falls off the Bill Nakatomi Tower at the end of Die Hard. Like it feels it's deserved, but it has a bit of gravity to it in a movie where they literally lose gravity. Whereas Tree Guy, it was that's felt like he wasn't even. They didn't make him a bad enough character for me to want him to get munched by a tree, and they didn't make him an interesting enough character, so it just felt a little weightless. It feels just
I knew he was going to die.
More like the slasher movie where you don't care about any of the characters and just feels like, which is a genre of horror I'm not big on, because it's like you create no gravity for these characters, and you just want me to enjoy seeing them get slashed. It's like, well, I need a little more than that. I need a context to have, like, what do we need here? I need a little bit something more. So I could have done something more. I do agree with James. There are deaths that that are appropriate.
So
and
I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying there's no humor in death. I mean, one of the greatest death scenes of all time is Patches O'Houlihan in Dodgeball when the sign falls on the Luck of the Irish sign falls on him. It's hilarious. It's funny, but there is still. But the movie, yes, it plays it off as a joke, but there's still this weightiness to it of this guy just died. And it actually it does impact the characters from that point, you know, forward in the movie. And so it's like that's really where I'm getting at. So like the She-Bears, it's this humor story. Joe Rogan has pointed it out on his podcast as a mockery of the Bible. So yeah, it's a humorous sounding story, but it absolutely is weighty, and the weightiness of it is don't mess with God's prophet. And so if God will kill 40 youths for just mocking his bald head, imagine what he's going to do to all of Israel when you're worshiping a false god. And so I think that's where that weightiness comes from. And so there's humorous elements to some of the things that happen, especially the guy, Miles called him the Jabba the Hutt of the Bible when he gets killed.
King Eglon. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Eglon is humorous. Is humorous, and is meant to be kind of humorous. That God is mocking that man for being fat, and then everything. Not for being fat, but for his other stuff. Well, anyway, so enough on that.
Well, I think it's always a good question of how we are taking it and how we're mindful of it. Yeah, I know people like to bash on Michael Bay's Transformers, but that first movie, I feel like the first movie really captured an idea of humor. There's even a moment where Megatron just flicks, he's like fleshling, and like flicks a guy like that, and he goes like flying across the street and hits a car. but it felt different. Whereas here there was just no, like, even moments that were meant to be humorous, like the tree thing was, but that was forgettable and kind of dumb, and that didn't really, like, of all the humorous deaths, that just felt cheap.
Yeah.
And so there is like casualness or cheapness, and nobody remarking, like, even in the news reports, like, yes, there was a fight at Cairo, like, people died on that pyramid, like, there's a way you can drum up that's big things are happening, and that maybe this movie was trying to skew again a little more to the kids in the seats or something, and dodge it, kind of like G.I. Joe cartoons where nobody ever gets shot or killed, or you literally have war going on and there's zero casualties.
Yeah, not to derail too much, but no, I think it was a robot chicken skit where it was like there was a Cobra person who actually killed someone, and they were like, "What are you doing?" Like, we're not supposed to kill each other. We're supposed to like.
There's a Community episode about that as well.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm getting confused with. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I think that's what it was. It was Community, but it was done in that style. That's
yeah.
right.
G.I. Jeff season 6.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So what are some other ideas we could receive or redeem? I already said. I already mentioned the line, "This is Godzilla's world. We just live in it," and I think we've kind of covered that. Like, we know this world is not ours, and obviously Titans and Kongs, like other created beings, are actually not who we're subject to. Like the King of the Monsters doesn't hold dominion over us, but the idea that we do answer to a king and should hold ourselves in a humble place in terms of the world and our place in it as his stewards, I think that's a redeemable aspect that a film like this, like, there is this powerful God being, and not just godlike like Godzilla, like, and we're beholden, like, this world is not our own because I'm not my own. Like, even though the dominion I've been given over to it is still ultimately not my own because I'm not my own. So it's God's world and we're just living in it.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that's actually quite a beautiful picture, because the whole point in Godzilla versus Kong, and this movie enriches Godzilla versus Kong in this regard, because you've got this kind of Kong bows to no one line.
Yeah.
And so Kong is essentially king of nothing in Godzilla versus Kong, and decides to challenge the true ruler of the world, suffers for it, and pride goes before his fall, right? At the end of that movie, he submits to the true king. And the result of that is, in this movie, that he actually, instead of being a prideful king of nothing, he's a humble king of his people.
Yeah.
So he actually gains exaltation through humility. So he descends to his proper place, in the proper order of things, and then gains status and privilege and position because of his submission to the true ruler of the world. Whereas if he didn't have that submission, he'd never be in the position that he's in now. I take it back. I'm moving this up from the shallow to the slightly deeper version.
It just got carbonated.
Yeah.
He got carbonated.
Yeah.
You have to see, like, the monsterverse is as an inadvertent hole to do it that way, but it works, right? It's like exactly what our life as a Christian is. It's like, by letting go of our pride and submitting to the true King, that's where we really find our honor, right? Humility goes before honor, because Kong has never been referred to King Kong in the monsterverse this far.
Yeah.
And at the end of this movie, this is where he becomes King Kong. He's actually king of something now.
That's why, he's the Scar King is done, so he's the new king.
He's King Kong.
And he has changed. I hadn't thought about it till we were talking. You guys mentioned Skull Island a few times, and if you go back to Skull Island, you've talked to Eric, you haven't seen it in a while. He's surly and has had almost no interaction with humans. And yet here in this movie, like, they were supposed to be the sort of benevolent helpers of humans. And so I like that in this movie, he shows, like, a surprising compassion that I didn't think we really got, except for the little girl we never got this idea that he really had compassion for anybody or anything else. But it's like Baby Kong, Baby Kong bites him. He does flip him around, which was great. But then after that, like this kid tries to get him killed by the water monster. And then we see the kid trades teams a couple times, kind of when they get back. He's like, oh, I'll laugh at Kong with everybody else. Like he's trying to play both sides whenever it suits him. And yet that Kong keeps sort of demonstrating like compassion and offering him food, offering him these different things. And that ultimately is what wins him over, which of course has a reciprocal effect to saving his butt later in the movie. It's a reminder of our calling. Like there may be people that we may need to cut ties with, but there are times when we're called to take hits, to turn the other cheek, and we win others over by that Christ-like, servant-minded example. We get to see Kong demonstrate that.
It's a great demonstration of how fear of God frees us from fear of anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. So Scar King hates Godzilla, and that creates this culture of fear and death.
Yeah.
Kong is now submitted to Godzilla and now is not part of that culture of fear. He just walks straight in there. He's not, timid at all, stands his ground and changes the culture of fear because of his proper fear for Godzilla at this point. So again, lots of Christian life application from this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost carbonated.
So we're not David, but we're Kong.
That's right. Well, Kong has found his people. We've mentioned that a few times, Eric. We may have missed. I guess that's a theme with a couple different characters, right?
Yeah. So the finding your people, it's kind of it's like that's Kong's arc. That's what he's been looking for this entire time. But it's also the little girl's arc, and I don't recall her name off the top of my head. But that's her arc. She's looking. She does her sign language, and she says, "I don't belong here. I don't know. I don't know where I belong." And the line that's repeated at least twice, probably maybe even more, is "Where you go, I go," and that reminded me so much of Ruth 1:16, where Ruth says, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." So what initially started off with the girl became an orphan, and it just happened. Nature happened and destroyed the island, and she became an orphan, and she was brought into this family. And then in her search for family, she found out that is the old joke that everyone does now. Family is what you found along the way. And that's literally what happens, is as she's going along and she finds literally her people, and she chooses to stay with her adoptive mother because that's who actually became her people. And I know I saw you guys smirking about your God will be my God. That's Godzilla. In this story is, no, we're going to live on this. I'm not going to live below with Kong and his kingdom. I'm going to live above with you, with God's kingdom and in Godzilla's kingdom on the surface. So, you are right, James the Younger. There is a lot of Christian life application that you get from a incredibly stupid movie like Kong X, Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire.
So we may have talked our way into carbonated before this whole thing was done.
I mean, we've got Ruth, Revelation, and Moses here, and at least 3 Christian life application points. Yeah. I feel like there has to be carbonated at this point.
I was like, we've hit Job, we've hit Psalms, we've hit Revelation, we've hit Ruth. We were talking about Genesis earlier. We've talked about Kings. So you're right.
Yep.
Maybe this is a carbonated movie then. I don't know.
There you go. Well, we'll leave that for the rest of our Popcorn Theology fans and participants and Patreon supporters to add. Maybe we've missed stuff. Maybe we'll find someone who'll argue that the cup runneth over, and spills out. And maybe we've missed that point where the sort of somebody will bring the pyramids together theologically and just blow this whole thing and we'll all go spinning around. But we should probably roll on this episode for now, or return to leave the Hollow Earth of Godzilla and get back to our regular Earth of the rest of our lives. But I know we've got James. It was great having you on with us, and probably not the last time.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Good. And Eric, I think next week is our Patreon Patron Saints of Popcorn Theology picked episode. Do we know what that is yet?
Yes. So it is going to be Minority Report. So I will. I'll be covering that next week. Next Wednesday, we'll do our live recording with that. So everyone come and join us, and as we do that. But yeah, Minority Report next week.
Right on. Well, James the Younger, if you would do us the honors, and if you have access or know our ending little tagline here, you want to take us out?
Until next time, keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective, and remember, you are not a mindless consumer.